Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 7 based on novel. So let's start. Lin Dong sat quietly in front of the black stone tablet. He shut his eyes tightly while the yuan power fluctuation over his entire body was being gradually suppressed at this moment. At a short distance behind him, the blind old man quietly observed this scene. The complicated expression on his wizened face was gradually withdrawn. He had indeed practiced this desolate demon eye before. However, he eventually failed because of an accident, resulting in both of his eyes becoming blind. The price was really quite a heavy one. The fact that Lin Dong ultimately chose this risky martial art also exceeded his expectations. Back then, that fellow Ju Tong hesitated for a long while before finally giving up on the desolate demon eye and ended up practicing the great desolate body instead. Although these two martial arts were comparable, the blind old man knew that there was an essential difference between the two. The great desolate body could strengthen one's physical body and improve one's overall combat strength. However, the desolate demon eye is a purely aggressive move. If one was to discuss the damage that they could cause, the latter was clearly superior to the former. Of course, this did not mean that Ju Tong's talent was lacking. Rather, it was not suitable for him to learn desolate demon eye. Moreover, given Ju Tong's character, it was not surprising that he chose the great desolate body instead. Whether you can successfully learn, it will depend on your own luck. Relax, our desolate hall has rarely had a young person who could be compared with that fellow from back then. This old man will not stand by and let you suffer the same fate as me. The blind old man stared at Lin Dong's back. A moment later, he sighed and softly muttered. He was aware that Chen Zhen and Wu Dao had high expectations for Lin Dong. If the latter became blind, just like him in the martial arts hall, it was likely that those two old fellows would be furious beyond belief. The blind old man sat down after his voice sounded. He could sense that even though Lin Dong had not moved, at this moment, there were waves of mental energy being emitted from his Newen palace. Finally, it lingered over the black-colored eye of the stone tablet. For Seal Heaven Symbol Master. The blind old man merely probed casually, before he was immediately able to detect Lin Dong's mental energy cultivation level. Instantly, he gently nodded his head. If Lin Dong's yuan power and mental energy were to be considered separately, he might not be considered overly outstanding amongst members of his generation. However, considering the both of them together, he was considered as extremely decent. The blind old man gradually quietened down. Everything once again became silent within this light film. Lin Dong's body suddenly trembled a little at this moment. An unusually vast and mighty mental energy suddenly rushed out from within his Newen palace. Finally, it shot into that black-colored eye on the stone tablet. Kai. Lin Dong's mind suddenly became absent-minded just when his mental energy shot into that black eye. Immediately, he realized that his surrounding had started to distort. By the time he completely calmed his mind, he discovered that he had landed in a large barren land. The land was completely flat. At a glance, it appeared that the plains were extended to the horizon. There, the sky and the land formed a single line, appearing as though they were connected together. A desolate aura that was accompanied by an ancient vicissitude brewed and rose within this place. It appeared as though this was an ancient land. Lin Dong stood on the ground and looked at the sky and land. He involuntarily felt the insignificance of his existence. A helpless sensation climbed from deep within his soul and spread across his body, causing him to be unable to move. Huff! Lin Dong inhaled a deep breath of air before his eyes suddenly turned sharp. His straight spear-like body forcefully suppressed this powerless sensation. He was aware that this place was likely the mental realm within the stone tablet. A fight in this place might not cause fresh blood to spurt like in reality, but it was dangerous and vicious as well. Should one end up being at a disadvantage in a mental energy fight, it might perhaps leave a sequela, which would have serious repercussions for his future training progress. Suppressing the tiny and helpless sensation within his heart, Lin Dong took a stride forward. When his foot landed on the soft ground, an endless sensation appeared to seep in from under his foot and spread into his body. Boom! At this moment, the ground suddenly began to tremble intensely. Numerous ripples that were visible to the naked eye spread over this boundaryless land. It swiftly spread apart, just like a pulse. Lin Dong's eyes quietly observed this scene. Under his calm observation, the distant ground suddenly began to tremble before it cracked, forming a large crack line. The crack line spread at a shocking speed. Within a short instant, it had reached tens of thousands of feet in length. That manner appeared as though it was an endless abyss. Ayo! After the deep abyss was formed, an extremely strange loud whining sound suddenly resounded across the land. An invisible ripple swept over the sky, and it directly stirred a monstrous hurricane. Lin Dong's eyes were slightly focused as he observed the deep abyss that had been split and formed. That place was where the sound had originated from, and he could vaguely see an enormous shadow moving within the darkness. Lin Dong's eyes stared intently at the deep abyss, before his eyes suddenly shrunk a moment later. Bang! Monstrous dust sputtered out from the deep abyss, while Lin Dong's eyes shrunk tightly. After which, an indescribable black shadow suddenly flew out from the deep abyss like an earth dragon. Its enormous shadow covered the sun. Lin Dong looked at the enormous beast that had flown out from the deep abyss. Immediately, he gently inhaled a breath of air. The enormous beast's body was like a snake. However, it was 10 of thousands of feet in size, and its entire body was black in color. Meanwhile, an icy cold evil aura swept apart like a storm. On the head of that giant beast, the spot that attracted the most attention was not its large mouth, which was filled with sharp teeth. Instead, it was a large black eye on its forehead. The enormous eye was currently shut. However, for some unknown reason, the hair all over Lin Dong's body stood up when he saw that eye. Is that Huang? Lin Dong's voice was harsh. If he was right, this enormous beast that covered the sun should be the so-called Huang. Judging by its frightening aura, Lin Dong did not doubt that this unusual beast possessed the terrifying ability to turn tens of thousands of kilometer radius of land into barren land. Huang flew into the sky. Its enormous body meandered in the sky. Finally, it slowly lowered its enormous head and stared at Lin Dong, who appeared as tiny as an ant on the ground below. Lin Dong's expression suddenly turned solemn when Huang shifted its attention. He could sense that the ground he was on had actually begun to wither rapidly. Such frightening desolate force. Although Lin Dong was clearly aware that this was a mental realm, and all that he had witnessed was not reality, he still felt an enormous pressure. The ground where Lin Dong stood on swiftly withered. A desolate color spread apart at a blinding rate. However, Lin Dong remained calm. He inhaled a violent breath of air before he stared back directly at that enormous being in the sky. If his mind showed signs of retreating at this moment, it was likely that he would be completely defeated in this metal battle. Kai. However, being directly stared at by Lin Dong clearly caused Huang to turn a little impatient. After which, the former's eyes shrunk when he realized that the enormous eye that Huang had kept shut was actually slowly opening up. Buzz. As Huang's enormous eye slowly opened up, Lin Dong could immediately sense the energy of the entire place turn wild and violent. Even the natural yuan power was fleeing from this dangerous region. The enormous eye slowly opened. There was an endless dark grayish color within the eye, and it was as though light could not penetrate through. Lin Dong's entire body was drenched in cold sweat when he saw this enormous eye opening. He immediately felt the skin on his head turn numb. Swoosh! The enormous eye finally opened completely. Instantly, 1,000 feet large gray light erupted from within that enormous eye. A gray beam flashed past, before the entire land instantly withered. The originally lush green color completely disappeared. Instead, taking its place was a desolate scene without life. Everything within thousands of kilometers had turned into barren land. However, Lin Dong's mind did not pay attention to his desolate surroundings at this moment. He could see that the enormous grayish beam was headed towards him at a terrifying speed. The grayish light was extremely fast. Within a flash, it had flashed past the sky. Its size also swiftly shrunk when it approached Lin Dong. By the time it reached Lin Dong's head, it was merely as tiny as a thumb. Kai. The grayish glow appeared to contain an extremely frightening energy. However, Lin Dong did not show any signs of avoiding it. This was because he was aware that this was a path that he must cross. Come, allow me to witness just how frightening the desolate demon eye is. Lin Dong slowly spread his arms. There were a sharpness and stubbornness flashing deep within his eyes. After which, the grayish glow shone onto his forehead in an unceremonious manner. A shocking headache spread across his mind instantly. Lin Dong's eyes also began to swiftly turn dark, appearing as though the light had disappeared. A faint light film covered the place, encompassing the 4 large stone tablets within it. A deathly silent atmosphere circulated within the light film, causing one to have some difficulties breathing. However, at this moment, there were 2 people within the light film. One was training while the other was a blind old man, who was already used to it. Hence, the pressuring atmosphere within this place did not cause the 2 of them to feel any discomfort. The blind old man was hugging a somewhat old and damaged broom. His grayish-white eyes that were without any pupils were lowered slightly. Even his breathing had become weak and inaudible at this moment. At a cursory glance, he appeared no different from a sick old man who was about to die. Kai. After this silence continued for around half a day, Lin Dong, who was sat in front of a stone tablet a short distance away, suddenly trembled. There was actually a weak light being scattered from the surface of the black stone tablet. The moment the light scattered from the stone tablet, the blind old man, who had his eyes lowered, suddenly raised his head. His body moved before he strangely appeared in front of Lin Dong, even though he hardly moved. After which, his expression turned a little solemn as he stared at Lin Dong's face. At this moment, there was a vague dark grayish color lingering over Lin Dong's youthful face. Moreover, this grayish color was gathering towards the spot between Lin Dong's eyebrows. An extremely slight grayish line had actually appeared on Lin Dong's forehead. That grayish line had an undefined form. It appeared to be connected to Lin Dong's skin, appearing just like a worm when it wiggled. He has met Huang already her. The blind old man's eyes were focused intensely on Lin Dong's face. His elderly face tensed up while his shriveled fingers could not help but rub against each other. Clearly, there was quite a big ripple on his calm old well-esque emotions. Under the observation of the blind old man, the grayish aura on Lin Dong's face became increasingly dense. 2 traces of blood suddenly flowed from the corner of Lin Dong's eyes when the grayish aura became dense. They were just like 2 blood tears and they looked extremely startling. Crack! Although the blind old man had lost his sight, he was still able to clearly observe this scene. His expression immediately changed drastically before the broom in his hand was directly crushed into powder. Having once practiced the desolate demon eye, he was clearly aware that practicing this martial art possessed some risk. It was extremely easy for that strange energy to seep into one's eyes. Moreover, should one's eyes be eroded by that energy, one would end up becoming just like him. The blind old man's face was extremely tense. His shriveled hand continued to tighten and relax. It was as if he was hesitating if he should drag Lin Dong out from the mental realm at this moment. Kai Kai. During the time that the blind old man hesitated, the unusual grayish qi on Lin Dong's face also became increasingly rich. While the grayish qi gathered, the gray line between his eyebrows also became a little thicker. At the same time, however, the blood line on the corner of Lin Dong's eyes also became increasingly glaring. Clearly, his eyes were already being eroded at this moment. Cluck cluck. The blind old man took tiny and chaotic steps back and forth in front of Lin Dong. This continued for a couple of minutes before he violently clenched his teeth. He turned around and his shriveled hand pierced towards the gray line between Lin Dong's eyebrows like a sharp sword with lightning-like speed. As long as this thing was broken, it would be possible to awaken Lin Dong. The blind old man was extremely quick, and it seemed as if his finger could penetrate through space. In just a flash, his fingers had already arrived in front of Lin Dong's forehead. However, just as he was about to pierce downwards, a warm white light suddenly rushed out from between Lin Dong's eyebrows and collided with his finger. Clang! The two collided, but no energy ripple erupted from it. That white light merely blocked the blind old man's fingers for an instant before it disappeared. Although the white light disappeared, the blind old man's fingers were also stopped. A surprised expression was clearly present on his face. There is no need for me to intervene here. The blind old man was quiet for a moment. He could only attribute the white light to something Lin Dong had unleashed subconsciously. If that was the case, it seemed like Lin Dong did not want to give up on learning the desolate demon eye. After receiving this information from Lin Dong, the frown on the blind old man's face appeared to be even denser. He stood on the spot for quite a while before shaking his head somewhat helplessly. He seemed to have underestimated Lin Dong's persistence when it came to learning martial arts. However, at times, persistence may or may not be a good thing. In that case, let's wait a little longer. If things really go wrong, I will forcefully drag you out. Truly a fellow who does not allow others to have a peaceful mind, the blind old man muttered to himself. After which, he sat down beside Lin Dong and continued to carefully observe him. As he continued to observe, the blind old man gradually relaxed. Although the blood trace on the corner of Lin Dong's eyes continued to flow, fortunately, it showed no sign of intensifying. This so-called wait directly lasted for 5 days. Lin Dong did not show any signs of leaving his training during these 5 days. The blood tears that had flowed out from the corner of his eyes had already hardened into 2 blood clots, causing him to look exceptionally strange. During this period of time, the grayish qi on Lin Dong's face also became increasingly dense, and there were no signs of it weakening. However, this also caused the blind old man, who was observing Lin Dong, to feel uncertain. Although the grayish line between Lin Dong's eyebrows was continuously gathering grayish qi, there was not the slightest further activity being emitted. Based on the old man's experience, the grayish line should gradually show signs of turning into an eye if Lin Dong succeeded. However, if he failed, Lin Dong would not be this calm. Therefore, even someone as experienced as him was a little confused. He did not understand what level Lin Dong's training was currently at. This manner that neither appeared like success nor failure really caused him to feel helpless. It has already been 5 days. Time is more or less up. It seems like this little fellow will need to battle with that brat Jiang Hao in the Desolate Hall monthly competition today. It is merely a competition between the younger generation members. Training is more important. Forget about it, Just let him train. If he misses it, then so be it. The blind old man muttered to himself. However, from his mannerism, it was clear that he did not wish for Lin Dong's training to be interrupted because of the latter's match with Jiang Hao. Hence, he did not show any signs that he was going to wake Lin Dong up. Buzz buzz. However, everything in this world always surprises people. Soon after the mutterings of the blind old man sounded out, a buzzing sound was suddenly emitted from the stone tablet. After which, he saw the black eye on the stone tablet suddenly shooting out a bright grey light. That light shot onto the spot between Lin Dong's eyebrows and coincided with the grey line. The ray of light linked the spot between Lin Dong's eyebrows and the stone tablet. The skin on that spot also began to wiggle. That grey line became increasingly obvious, and it actually vaguely began to show signs of opening. A dark, cold and evil aura, which caused one great discomfort, was vaguely emitted from it. Is it about to transform into an eye? The blind old man's body immediately straightened when he saw this scene. He stared intently at Lin Dong's brows. However, under his observation, the grey line ultimately did not show any signs of splitting apart despite its wiggling continuously. What is going on? The blind old man frowned tightly and softly asked. While he was knitted his brows, the blind old man did not observe a warm white glow under the greyish light that could not be detected. The light that was connected to Lin Dong's brows gradually weakened. A moment later, it finally emitted a kai sound and completely disappeared. Just when the light disappeared, Lin Dong's eyes, which had been shut for 5 days, finally slowly opened up at this moment. His ajar eyes were as clear and calm as they were 5 days ago. Although the blood clot at the corner of his eyes was a little strange to look at, the current Lin Dong did not appear any different from 5 days ago. The blind old man was a little stunned as he looked at Lin Dong's calm expression when he opened his eyes. He was lost for words at that moment. Thank you, Elder, for protecting me during my training. A smile swiftly surfaced on Lin Dong's face. He stood up, bowed to the blind old man and said, "It's nothing. If you have finished training, you should leave. Today is the Desolate Hall monthly competition." The blind old man slowly stood up, waved his hand and said. Lin Dong nodded. He did not say any unnecessary words as he turned around and left. When he was just about to walk out of the light film, the blind old man finally could not resist asking, "Although I do not know whether you have successfully learnt it, you should try to use the Desolate Demon Eye as little as possible in the future. This martial art is a little unorthodox, and it will hurt your eyes if you use it too many times." Lin Dong's footsteps paused. He immediately rubbed the spot between his eyebrows with his hand. The corner of his lips was lifted into a slight arc. He had similarly sensed some of the darker aspects of Desolate Demon Eye while he was training. However, it was likely that this thing would not be able to stir much trouble with the mysterious stone talisman suppressing it. Within the mountain range that the Desolate Hall was located in, there was an especially vast and tall mountain peak. This mountain peak pierced through the clouds, which tumbles and twists around it, giving it an out-of-world feeling. This mountain peak was the location of the Desolate Hall's main hall. It could be counted as the head of the various halls within the Desolate Hall. The monthly competition was also held on this mountaintop. The monthly competition was the most customary event held within Dao Sect and the 4 halls. This goal of this customary event was to observe the training progress of the disciples and use this event to stimulate their disciples' desire to train, which would increase the overall strength of the halls. Furthermore, in every monthly competition, there will be a few branch disciples who will be promoted to become full-fledged disciples due to their stellar performance. Therefore, even though this competition was held every month, this day was still the most lively day every month. That was because this was the only day whereby those branch disciples had the chance to be promoted to the main hall. Within the desolate hall, the number of branch disciples ranges in the tens of thousands. As for the full-fledged disciples, there were 3,000 of them and there were 300 direct disciples. This could be said to be a humongous lineup. Within a day, there will be an overwhelming majority of them gathered here. Thus, the commotion caused by such an event would naturally not be trivial. At the highest spot on the mountain peak, stood a quiet and large ancient hall that pierced through the clouds. A majestic aura was being emitted from it. Meanwhile, its yellowish color was the mark left behind by time, demonstrating that it had withstood the test of time. In front of this great hall was an extremely vast green stadium, which gave off a strong feeling of stratification and order. At this moment, it was already packed densely with mountains of people. Although the vast stadium was filled with countless individuals, there was not a single scuffle. Over 10,000 disciples sat quietly in the stadium. The solemn air that filled the atmosphere even caused fluctuations in the surrounding natural yuan power. Near the center of the stadium was where the full-fledged disciples sat today. A few of the branch disciples were looking at them. Brimming within their eyes were envy and admiration. The purpose of their hard work was for the dream to one day become a full-fledged disciple of the desolate hall. Looking further beyond to the center of the stadium, there was a series of tall erected platforms. Seated on them were a few hundred people dressed in yellow clothes. Every one of them was emitting wave after wave of frightening yuan power fluctuations. Those were the direct disciples, the true elite of the desolate hall. If the gazes of the branch disciples were filled with envy and admiration, the gazes directed towards the direct disciples were also filled with a trace of respect. All of them were clearly aware that becoming a direct disciple was a mark of power and strength. However, what caught the eye of most people in the stadium was not the direct disciples. Instead, it was the four wide and tall platforms situated at the center of the stadium. On those four platforms sat four different people. Their status and position were higher than any disciple in the desolate hall. Their status and position was something that anyone would know of, and there was no one who would doubt their capabilities. That was because the four of them were the four senior direct disciples of the desolate hall. In other words, they were the most outstanding existences amongst all the disciples in the desolate hall. On the opposite side of the stadium was a stone table and a row of stone chairs. Seated there was Chen Zhen, Wu Dao and a few other protectors of the desolate hall. They were currently observing the scene before them. According to the information that we received, there are hundreds of branch disciples this time around that have the qualifications to become full-fledged disciples, announced Wu Dao as his gaze swept across the whole stadium. After hearing that statement, Chen Zhen faintly nodded his head. This number was much better than the statistics from the past few months. It seems like those little fellows at the bottom had trained quite hard this past couple of months. Lin Dong still hasn't appeared, asked Chen Zhen suddenly. Yes, replied Wu Dao as he continued speaking while smiling. He should be in a critical phase of his training. Senior brother Mo is quite interested in him, and he should be keeping a close eye on him. If he can't make it on time, postpone the challenge match for 1 month as training is more important, said Chen Zhen while smiling. He did not wish for Lin Dong to appear now. Based on Lin Dong's talent, his chances of victory even against Jiang Hao would increase quite a bit if he was to train for 1 more month. News has already spread, and even some branch disciples have heard about Lin Dong. They all want to witness the superhuman genius that dared to challenge one of the 4 senior direct disciples after entering the desolate hall for less than a month, said Wu Dao helplessly. Furthermore, based on Lin Dong's character, I'm afraid that he will never back down. His character is truly similar to senior brother Ju Tong. Else, he would not have charged up to Yuan Gate alone. After thinking about it, I believe that even Lord Sect Master would have protected him if he stayed in Dao Sect. But Yuan Gate, that damned thing, vented Chen Zhen before deeply sighing. When he mentioned this incident, even a person of his status could not help but curse. Wu Dao turned solemn and his face turned quite gloomy. One could tell how bitter he was about Ju Tong and the Yuan Gate incident. That's enough, let's not talk about it. Let's wait a while longer. After Chen Zhen saw the expression on Wu Dao's face, he secretly shook his head. If Senior Ju Tong was still around now, based on his past results, there was a good chance that he could rival those old codgers in the sect. Regretfully, the sect master of Yuan Gate personally took action, and perhaps, he detected the threat that Ju Tong would become in the future, should he be given enough time to grow. While Chen Zhen and Wu Dao were conversing, a slight commotion had appeared because of the delay in the monthly competition. On top of a stone platform, Jiang Hao was casually observing the mountainous amount of people in the stadium. Promptly, he furrowed his eyebrows. It is rumored that Lin Dong had submerged himself in the martial arts hall for 5 days already. Was he planning to use that as an excuse to avoid today's match? Ha ha, senior brother Jiang Hao. Looks like the challenge match today might have fizzled out. Fang Yun grinned when he saw this sight. He stretched his back casually before teasing Jiang Hao. If that is the case, his previous showcase of arrogance is truly a joke, replied Jiang Hao calmly and casually. Lin Dong has just entered our desolate hall. Even if you defeat him, it would not be anything glamorous. Furthermore, he is our junior brother, said Pang Tong while frowning. He was the one with the greatest qualifications amongst the 4 senior direct disciples. I didn't mean to cause trouble for him. However, there are times when respecting a senior brother is still required, right? If this doesn't happen, in the future, members of our desolate hall will be mocked by those from the other halls for not knowing how to respect one's seniors, replied Jiang Hao after curling his lip. It is all right to let him suffer a little to restrain his arrogant disposition. However, you have to remember that senior Uncle Chen Zhen and the others highly value Lin Dong, added Song Ju while smiling. I will exercise discretion. Since he was able to endure the Pill River head immersion for so long, even I have to respect him for that. However, he is still considered as a new disciple, and he needs to know the rules. Since you guys are unwilling to take action, it's down to me, said Jiang Hao casually. Song Ju smiled once again, and only nodded his head without saying anything else. However, the unexpected delay had added an extra tinge of anticipation. Song Ju was curious to see what kind of incredible performance that junior brother, who had rushed up with an irresistible force since his entry into Desolate Hall, would have against one of the 4 senior direct disciples, Jiang Hao. Would he be beaten till his arrogant spirit was replaced with despair, or would he perform another miracle once again? As all the disciples quietly awaited, time slowly passed. However, the commotion in the stadium was gradually getting more intense as time passed. Seeing this, both Chen Zhen and Wu Dao frowned. However, they did not prevent this. Instead, their eyes irresistibly moved towards the mountain peak where the martial arts hall was situated. It's time, but why hasn't that fellow Lin Dong appeared? At a corner within the location of the direct disciples, Mo Ling and the others were getting slightly worried. Their gazes continuously scanned all directions. They clearly knew that news regarding the match between Lin Dong and Jiang Hao had spread far and wide during these few days. If Lin Dong did not show up, he might become the target for ridicule and mockery. Lin Dong went to the martial arts hall, and is most likely delayed, because he is learning a new martial art. Liu Bai said solemnly. He looked towards the crowd helplessly and said, just wait a while longer. Panicking would not solve the problem. Furthermore, it may be a good thing to postpone this fight. After all, Lin Dong's opponent is one of the 4 senior direct disciples. From the way he phrased his words, it was obvious that he was not favoring Lin Dong's odds for this challenge match. Although he had quite a lot of confidence in Lin Dong, regardless, Jiang Hao was not someone that Tong Chuan could be compared with. After hearing his words, the group could only nod their heads and suppress the anxiety in their hearts, as they eagerly waited for the arrival of Lin Dong. The burning sun above the sky started to reach the midpoint position. Seeing this, Chen Zhen and Wu Dao could only helplessly shake their heads. Seems like Lin Dong was truly engrossed in his training. Let the other disciples begin first. Chen Zhen waved his hand before a protector of the desolate hall slowly walked out. His eyes swept across the entire stadium before he proceeded to announce the start of the monthly competition. Upon seeing his appearance and announcement, a disappointed hiss could be heard ringing across the entire stadium. Swoosh! However, just as this disappointed hiss started to decline, the sound of air shattering suddenly resounded out from the sky far away. A familiar aura could be felt spreading out from there. Has he finally arrived? He did not disappoint me in the end. Jiang Hao raised his head and looked towards a distant spot in the sky. A chuckle appeared on his face. This video will end here.